Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. Ryan's ship shook as it broke through the dusty clouds of a quiet alien world. His cargo route had been simple, just deliver mining parts and head back. But now, his navigation was fried. He had no choice but to make an emergency landing. The ship landed rough on a green hillside. Smoke hissed from the engine vents. Ryan coughed and pulled himself out of the pilot seat. "Just great," he muttered. "Stranded. Again." He stepped outside and looked around. The planet was peaceful. Strange blue trees with long leaves moved slowly in the wind. Small floating lights buzzed through the air like insects. His ship had landed near a farming village made of stone domes and crystal towers. Alien beings, tall, slender, with soft skin that shimmered under the sun, looked at him from a distance. They didn't speak, just watched quietly. Ryan raised his hands in peace. "Hi there. Just a broken ship, not a threat." No one replied. Hours passed. Ryan worked on his ship's panel, trying to fix the power lines. The sun began to set. That's when he noticed a small figure standing a few feet away. A little alien girl, maybe 8 years old. Her eyes were large and shining, and her hands were behind her back. She didn't run away when he looked at her. Instead, she walked closer. Ryan put down his tools and smiled gently. "Hey, you're brave. Everyone else is scared of me." The girl tilted her head. "You're a human." He nodded. "Yes, I'm Ryan. What's your name?" "Lena," she said softly. There was a long pause. Then out of nowhere, Lena took a deep breath and said something that made Ryan freeze. "Human, my mother needs a husband." Ryan blinked. What?" "She cries herself to sleep every night since my father left. I hear her through the walls." Ryan wasn't sure how to respond. I'm just here to fix my ship. I'm not—" "She's strong," Lena said quickly. "Smart. She farms better than the village men. But she's lonely and sad. I tried to help, but I'm just a kid. Maybe you can help. You fixed your ship, right? Maybe you can fix her." Ryan sat down slowly. This was the last thing he expected today. "I'm not sure she wants to be fixed," he said gently. Lena looked down. "She won't ask. She's too proud. That's why I did it for her." "Did what?" Lena pulled a glowing stone from her small pouch. "I added your name to the calling circle. You've been chosen. You have to meet her now." Ryan's jaw dropped. Wait, what's the calling circle?" "It's our sacred matchmaking ritual," Lena said, like it was obvious. "When a name is entered, you must attend. You don't have to marry, but you have to meet." Ryan leaned back, rubbing his face. "Kid, I just landed here by accident." "Maybe the stars brought you," Lena said. "Maybe my father left so you could come." She didn't sound like she was joking. Ryan stared at the little girl, her tiny hands clenched tight around the glowing stone. She was serious. "I can't promise anything," Ryan said slowly. "But I'll meet her." The next morning, 2 tall alien women came to Ryan's ship. Without a word, they handed him a clean robe made of silver threads and soft leaves. It smelled like fruit and earth. They walked him to the village. The buildings were quiet. Everyone watched from windows and doors as he passed. He could feel their eyes. Whispers followed him like shadows. Soon, he stood before a tall crystal tower. The guards opened the door. Inside was a wide room with high ceilings and soft light. At the far end stood a woman. She was tall, strong, and graceful, like a statue carved from moonlight. Her dark hair fell to her waist, and her eyes, they didn't welcome him. They studied him. This was Vera. Lena ran to her side and whispered, "He came." Vera raised an eyebrow and looked at Ryan. "So," she said coldly, "you're the human my daughter chose for me." Ryan raised his hands, carefully. "It wasn't my idea, but I'm here just to talk." Vara's eyes narrowed. I don't need a husband. Ryan gave a small smile. I figured. But maybe you could use a friend. Lena looked up at her mother with hope. Vara said nothing. But for a moment, just a tiny moment, the coldness in her eyes faded. Vara was known in her village as the Iron Bloom. She was beautiful, yes, but cold. Her eyes held storms, and her silence could shake even the bravest warriors. After her mate vanished during a trade voyage years ago, she had spoken few words and shown even fewer emotions. And now, a human stood in her home. Ryan sat awkwardly on a flat stone seat in her long dining hall, surrounded by strange fruits and crystal bowls. Lena was nearby, trying to act casual, but her wide eyes kept darting between her mother and the visitor like a nervous bird. Vara poured herself a glass of blue liquid. She did not offer him one. You humans enjoy interfering in things that do not belong to you, she said, her tone flat. I didn't mean to interfere, Ryan replied calmly. Your daughter came to me. She is a child, and you are a grown man, a stranger. She spoke honestly, Ryan said. It wasn't easy for her. Vara's jaw tensed. She didn't look at him, just stared out the window at the fields. My daughter is kind-hearted, too kind. I have warned her not to hope. An awkward silence followed. Ryan looked around the home. Everything was perfectly clean. No dust, no clutter. It was beautiful, but it felt like no one lived there. Then he noticed it, an old cracked music shell placed on a side table half buried under cloth. Dust covered it. He pointed. That a music orb? Vara didn't answer. Lena jumped up. It was my father's favorite. Does it still play? Ryan asked. No, Vara said sharply. Ryan stood. Mind if I try to fix it? Vara turned, her cold eyes toward him. Why? Ryan shrugged. Fixing things is what I'm good at. Better than talking, usually. Vara didn't stop him. But she didn't encourage him either. Ryan spent the next hour taking apart the old device while Lena watched, fascinated. Sparks flew, and small circuits clicked into place. Then, click, a soft hum. The orb glowed, and music floated out. A warm, slow melody, like wind through trees. Vara turned. The sound hit her like a forgotten memory. Her hand reached out slowly, touching the surface of the orb. Her eyes shimmered, but she turned away quickly before anyone could see. Ryan didn't speak. He just nodded and stepped back. That night he left quietly and returned to his camp beside his ship. The next day he found something waiting for him, a basket of fruit, clean water, and warm cloth. No name, no note, just quietly left outside his ship. He smiled. Days passed. Ryan began helping villagers fix broken fences, tools, and drones. Some were unsure of him, but Lena ran beside him everywhere, proudly saying, "This is the human my mother hates less now." Ryan laughed every time. But one evening, as the sky turned deep purple, Ryan walked by Vara's field and found her standing alone, her hands buried in soil, eyes closed. She looked peaceful. But as he approached, her back stiffened. "I know. You're there," she said without turning. "Just passing," Ryan said, pausing. She stood slowly, wiping her hands. "You fixed a broken thing." "I fix what I can," he said. "My heart is not one of them. I didn't say I'd try." She looked at him, eyes sharp. He continued, "But your daughter? She's already halfway fixed it. I'm just following her lead." For a long moment, Vara said nothing. Then, she did something she hadn't done in years. She smiled. Just a little. Just enough for Ryan to see the woman behind the armor. But that night Ryan sat alone near his fire. He looked at his old flight log. Leave in 5 days, no attachments, no delays. It was written by his own hand before he landed. He sighed and tapped his fingers against his knee. "She's starting to smile again," he whispered to himself. "And I don't know if I can walk away now." Back in the village, Vara sat beside the music orb, playing it softly while Lena slept in her arms. She stared at the stars and whispered something only the wind could hear. He doesn't belong here, but he feels like he does. The sun rose golden over the alien hills, casting long shadows across the quiet village. Ryan had stayed longer than planned. He still told himself he was just fixing things, but the truth was harder to ignore now. He had started caring. Lena was always by his side, bright, curious, asking 100 questions a day. But lately he noticed she didn't talk about her missing father anymore. She talked about Ryan. "My mother listens when you speak," she said once, as they walked through the orchard. "She never listens to anyone. She listens so she can tell me I'm wrong," Ryan joked. "No," Lena said seriously. "She listens because she hopes." Ryan didn't have an answer for that. That evening, Ryan brought repaired farming drones to Vera's garden. She was already outside trimming tall, sharp-edged flowers. "I thought you'd left," she said without looking. "I tried," Ryan replied, "but the ship keeps finding new problems." She raised an eyebrow. "How convenient." Ryan smiled. "Maybe your daughter hacked it." "I wouldn't be surprised." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Ryan stepped closer. "You don't have to speak if you don't want to, but you do have to eat. So I brought this." He handed her a small wrapped meal, cooked using her people's ingredients but with a human twist. Vera looked at it surprised. "You made this?" "Kind of. Lena helped. I just burned things until they didn't smell bad." She smirked slightly and took the food. They ate quietly. Not as strangers, but not yet as friends. Something new was growing between them. The next morning it changed. The village bell rang, loud, sharp, urgent. Ryan stepped out of his tent and saw a large decorated hoverpod land in the central square. A figure stepped out, tall, powerful, dressed in golden armor. It was Commander Ether, an alien nobleman who once courted Vara years ago. He had returned. Whispers spread. "He's come to claim the widow." She turned him down once, but he never forgot the insult. He won't leave without an answer. Ryan watched from a distance as Vera stood straight and calm in front of Ether. He spoke with pride and authority. "I see you found yourself a new project," he said, glancing at Ryan. Vera didn't react. "He is a guest." "Guests leave," Ether said loud enough for the village to hear. "I offer permanence, bloodline, power." She didn't answer, so he turned to the crowd. "If he believes he's worthy, let him stand in the gentleman's trial." Everyone gasped. Ryan blinked. "The what now?" Lena grabbed his arm. "It's a test. 3 parts. Only the best males are allowed to bond with high-ranking women. What happens if I fail?" "You leave," Lena whispered, "and never come back." Vera stepped forward. "This is nonsense. The old laws are no longer." But Ryan raised his hand. "I'll do it." Everyone turned to him. "Why?" Vera asked sharply. "You don't belong here." "Maybe not," he said. "But someone has to prove you're not a prize to be claimed." The village prepared the trial. First test, bond with the child. Ryan didn't need to try. Lena stood beside him and said, "He's already my heart." The crowd nodded. Second test, heal the widow's sorrow. This one was harder. Ryan had no magic, no tech. He just stood before Vara and said softly, "I can't replace what you lost, but I can stand with you in the silence. I can be the one who stays." Vara looked down. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Third test, show courage through action. That's when the sky changed. A sudden storm rolled in, sharp winds, shaking trees, lightning flashing. A warning beacon blared. A landslide had broken part of the dam. The water would flood the lower farms if not stopped. Ethar stepped back. "This is not part of the trial." But Ryan ran. He grabbed a broken shield drone, sprinted to the edge of the dam and climbed down as rocks tumbled. The villagers watched in awe, with vines, scrap metal, and a raw courage. Ryan held the flood back long enough for the others to seal the breach. When he returned, soaked and bleeding, the village was silent. Even Ether had nothing to say. Vera walked up to him, her eyes locked with his. "You could have died," she said. "I would have," he replied, "if it meant keeping what I found here alive." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She took his hand. For the first time in years, she didn't feel cold. That night, the village celebrated Ryan's victory. Lanterns floated into the sky. Music played from glowing crystal flutes. Children danced around the fire, and even the elders smiled. But Ryan didn't stay. He walked alone to the edge of the orchard, sat on a log, and stared up at the twin moons. Behind him, footsteps. He didn't need to turn. He knew it was her. Vera stood in silence for a moment, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Then she spoke. "You made a fool of Ether today." "He made it easy," Ryan said. She didn't laugh. Instead, she walked around him and dropped something in front of him. His flight log, the one he thought was hidden on his ship. "I found this in your storage crate," she said flatly. Ryan stared at the open screen. It showed an old note written in his voice. "Don't stay longer than 5 days. Don't get involved. Don't fall for anyone. Deliver cargo. Leave." Vara's voice was calm, but ice cold. "So was this all part of your plan? A game? Flirt with the widow. Fix a drone. Be a hero. Then vanish?" Ryan stood up slowly. "It wasn't like that." "No," she snapped. "Because from where I stand, it looks exactly like that." She turned away, her hands shaking. "I let you into
my home,
my life. I let my daughter believe in you. I let myself hope." Ryan felt a twist in his chest. He stepped forward. "Vara, that note. It was written before I even met you. Before I met her. It was a rule I made to survive." "To survive?" "I've been to dozens of planets. I've seen too many people, too much hurt. I started walking away before anything could pull me in. Because if I stayed, if I cared, I'd never be able to leave." He looked her in the eyes. "And then I landed here, and met you, and Lena. And I've been breaking that rule every day since." Vera looked at him, anger in her eyes, but something else too. Pain, long-hidden, deep pain. "I lost my mate," she said quietly. "I raised Lena alone. Every night I told myself I didn't need anyone, that love was a weakness." She took a step closer. "Then you smiled, and fixed a stupid music orb, and I hated you for it." Ryan blinked. "Why?" "Because you made me feel something again." There was silence, only the soft wind through silver leaves. Vera reached into her sleeve and pulled out the matchmaking stone Lena had used weeks ago. She placed it in Ryan's hand. "This is yours now. If you want to leave, walk into the jungle and throw it into the wind." She turned away. "If you want to stay, come back and return it to me, as an answer." That night, Ryan didn't sleep. He sat by the river, holding the glowing stone, staring into the water. His old flight path blinked on his wrist comm. A nearby transport ship could pick him up tomorrow. He could go. No one would blame him. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a wanderer. He felt home. Back in the village, Lena slept curled under a soft blanket. Vera sat beside her, brushing her hair gently, but her mind was far away. She whispered to herself, "He's gone, isn't he?" The next morning, the village awoke to a strange sight. Ryan was in the center of the circle. He was standing next to the elders' table, holding the glowing stone in his hand. Everyone gathered. Vera stepped out from her home, trying to keep her expression calm. Ryan looked at her and raised the stone, then walked straight up and placed it into her palm. "I was wrong," he said. She looked at him. "I thought I didn't belong anywhere. I thought loving someone again would break me." He took her hand gently. "But now I know. Not loving you would be worse." "Lizo." Elders smiled. The villagers clapped. But all Vera did was whisper one soft word. "Stay." Ryan smiled back. I already have. The village square was full of whispers. Some watched with quiet respect, others with hidden doubt. After all, Ryan was still an outsider, a human, a wanderer from the stars. Some believed the bond between him and Vera was real. Others thought it was just a passing spark. So the elders called for the trial of heart, not to punish, not to test strength, but to prove, once and for all, that Ryan's love came from truth. The next morning, Ryan stood shirtless in the circle of stones. The Mayu. Wind was cold. The sky above was dark with clouds. An elder stepped forward. The trial is not about blood or war, she said. It is about the soul. She raised 3 fingers. 3 trials. 1 for the child, 1 for the widow, 1 for the spirit that binds them. Ryan nodded. He didn't speak. But inside, he felt the weight of every heartbeat in the crowd. First trial. The child's trust, Lena was led to the center. She carried a delicate glass bowl filled with shimmering water. You will follow her, the elder said, and protect the flame she carries. Ryan was confused, until Lena reached into the bowl and pulled out a tiny glowing flower floating on the surface. I must walk the bridge, she said, and not spill the light. Ryan's eyes widened. The bridge was ancient, thin, made of vine and bone, stretching high over a sharp canyon. The wind howled below. Lena stepped onto the bridge. The bowl trembled in her hands. Ryan walked slowly behind her, not touching her, just whispering soft encouragement. You're doing great, almost there, 1 step at a time. Halfway across, a gust of wind nearly knocked her over. Ryan jumped forward, catching her elbow just before she slipped. The bowl didn't tip. The flower stayed afloat. They reached the end. Lena turned, smiling. I knew you'd never let me fall. Second trial. The widow's grief. At nightfall, Ryan was led blindfolded into the Whispering Grove, where the trees echoed voices from the past. There, alone, he heard a recording from Vera's lost husband, words captured long ago. I will return. I promise, no matter what. I will come back to you and Lena. The sound of his voice hit Ryan like a punch. The trial was cruel. Vera's sorrow echoed in every whisper of wind. Ryan fell to his knees. But instead of speaking, he placed his hand on the ground and whispered, You were her past. I will be her future. The forest went still. Then soft golden leaves fell around him. The spirits had accepted his words. Final trial, the spirits' test. The last trial had no rules, no path, only a choice. At dawn, Ryan was taken to the edge of the sacred cliff, where the spirit beacon glowed like fire in the sky. The elder pointed to a tall spear beside it. If you want to stay, you must plant the beacon deep into the earth, so your spirit becomes part of ours. Ryan reached for the spear. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A quake. The cliff began to crack, and from the jungle below, a storm was coming, thunderclouds rolling, fast, lightning flashing like angry teeth. Do it now, someone cried. Ryan looked down at the village, then back at the beacon. He slammed the spear down, once, twice. Then lightning struck the hill beside him, blasting fire and stone into the air. The cliff gave way. Ryan fell. He was gone. The crowd screamed. Vera ran forward, heart shattering. Ryan! Silence. Then, movement. From the smoke and dust. A hand. A figure pulled itself up. Burned, bloody, barely standing, but alive. Ryan climbed back to the top, dragging the spear with one hand and planted it deep into the earth. A wave of light burst out across the land. The trees bowed, the wind calmed, and for the first time in history, the spirit beacon glowed green, the color of welcome. That night, no one questioned him again. Not the elders, not the villagers, not even Vera. She sat beside him near the fire, holding his hand as he rested. You were almost lost, she whispered. He smiled weakly. Worth it. She leaned in, gently pressing her forehead to his. You passed the trial. He looked into her eyes. No. We passed it together. The stars blinked gently above the quiet village, but inside Vera's heart, a storm was rising. Ryan was asleep, barely. His body was bruised, his hands burned from the lightning that nearly ended him during the final trial. He had survived. No, he had sacrificed. Not for fame, not for power, for her, for Lena, for a chance at belonging. Vera sat beside him, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. In the dim firelight, he looked fragile, too human. Her fingers brushed a scar on his shoulder, then stopped. How had she let him in so deeply? How had this stranger from the stars found his way into the cracks of her carefully built walls? Her heart pulled toward him, but her fear pulled harder. Outside, the village was not as quiet as it seemed. News had spread. Commander Ether had returned. And this time, not alone. 3 armored guards stood behind him at the edge of the village, their boots glowing faintly. He demanded a private meeting with the elders. Inside the meeting hut, voices grew louder. Ryan has no right to stay, Ether shouted. He endangered sacred ground. One elder replied, and yet the spirits accepted him. Ether slammed his fist on the table. It doesn't matter. He is not one of us. And if the widow dares to bond with him, I will demand exile law. Gasps echoed. Exile law meant Vera would be banished from the village forever, cut off from her people, her home, her land. Vera stood outside the hut, listening in silence. She knew the law. If she chose Ryan now, she would lose everything. Later that night, she returned to Ryan's side. He was awake now, sitting up slowly with pain in his eyes. But when he saw her, he smiled. Hey, still alive. She forced a smile, but her eyes were full of storm. You don't belong here, she said suddenly. Ryan blinked. What? You risked your life for us. You helped my daughter. You healed old wounds. But still, this isn't your home. Ryan sat upright, confused. Where is this coming from? You passed the trials, yes, but I never asked you to stay. Ryan's voice lowered. Vera, I thought we had something real. She looked away. You thought wrong. He stood, grabbing his shirt slowly, trying not to wince from the pain. Is this really you talking? Or them? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Ryan nodded once, lips tight. He stepped toward the door. If I'm not wanted, I'll leave by morning. He left without looking back. But the moment he disappeared into the shadows, Vara fell to her knees. Her hands trembled, her breath caught in her throat. And tears she had buried for years, finally spilled down her face. In her home, Lena woke to the sound of soft sobbing. She peeked out and saw her mother curled on the floor, whispering his name. Why did I push him away? Lena ran up to her. Then go after him. I can't, Vera cried. If I choose him, I lose everything. Lena's small voice didn't hesitate. Then lose everything, but don't lose him. The next morning, the village gathered again. Commander Ether stood tall, ready to force his claim. She has until sun peak to make her choice. Him or us. The crowd murmured. The elders stayed silent. And Ryan? He was walking toward his ship, step by step with heavy shoulders and an aching heart. The ship's ramp opened. He paused, just once. Would she come? Would she call his name? Then, running footsteps, Vera appeared, breathless, covered in morning dew. She held something in her hand, the bond thread, a golden ribbon used only once in a lifetime. Only when a soul chose another soul. She shouted across the field. I choose you. Everyone turned. Gasps filled the air. Ryan turned slowly. She walked toward him, past the villagers, past the elders, past Ether. She held out the ribbon, and with trembling hands, tied it around his wrist. Ether spoke, but no one listened. Because, the moment that ribbon glowed, the village knew. The spirits had accepted it, and the exile law had no more power here. That night, Ryan stood by the glowing pool once again, staring into its light. Vara joined him silently. He looked at her. "Why, did you come?" She smiled gently. "Because for once, I wanted to choose love over fear." The days after Vara's choice were unlike anything the village had ever seen. Some people still whispered, some still doubted. But no one could ignore the truth anymore. The golden bond thread on Ryan's wrist didn't fade. In fact, it glowed brighter with each passing day. Vara returned to her fields. Ryan helped beside her, not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as a partner. They worked together side by side, planting crops, rebuilding tools, and guiding the new energy grid that had started growing across the land, powered by the same strange spirit pulse Ryan once awakened during the trial. Everywhere he stepped, the soil felt warmer. The vines bloomed faster. Even the birds sang more. Lena was the happiest of all. She now had a family again. Every night she sat between them, telling wild stories she made up in her head about space whales, moon pirates, and a brave human who saved a lonely alien queen. Vara always smiled. Ryan always laughed. Sometimes he even added to her stories. But one evening, as Ryan sat by the fire polishing an old tool, a small communication beacon on his wrist blinked. It was the fleet, the old job, the old world. The message was simple. New contract available. High pay, short trip, pick up in 2 days. Ryan stared at it for a long time, then slowly, he turned it off. Later that night, he sat near the river. The sky was clear. The stars looked close enough to touch. Vara joined him quietly. "You got a message," she said. "I saw the light." He nodded. "They want me back. Do you want to go?" Ryan didn't answer for a while, then he said, "Part of me thought I'd never stop moving, that if I stayed too long in one place, I'd disappear." He turned to her. "But here, I finally feel seen." Vara touched his hand. "You were always meant to land here," she said. "Even if your ship didn't know it." He chuckled. "That ship's smarter than it looks." The next morning, the village gathered again, not for a trial, not for a fight, but for a celebration. Under the twin suns, the bond ceremony took place. A quiet ritual between two people, witnessed by the land, the people, and the stars. Vara stood in a simple robe woven from silver leaves. Ryan wore a tunic made by the village children, stitched with patterns of stars, vines, and tiny handprints, Lena's idea. The priestess of the grove spoke words of unity. Then, handed Ryan and Vara a single glowing thread. They tied it together, each wrapping the other's wrist. The glow pulsed once, then spread outward, through the earth, the trees, and the air. A new energy took root. Not magic, not prophecy, just love. That night, while others danced, Ryan sat with Lena beside the fire. She leaned on his shoulder. "Is it okay that I call you Dad now?" she asked. He blinked. His throat tightened. He nodded slowly. "Only if I get to call you my daughter." Lena grinned. "Deal." Later, Vara sat beside them, her eyes full of warmth, her hand slipping into his, and for the first time in many years, she didn't feel like a widow. She felt like something new. A woman who had once lost everything and found something better. Not a replacement, but a rebirth. Ryan looked at his little family. He had once traveled across stars without a place to call home. Now, he wasn't just a man. He was a husband, a father, a healer, and most of all, he belonged. As the stars lit up the sky, the priestess whispered an old blessing. The stars gave him to us, the soil held him, and the heart claimed him. Let no shadow take him again.